I'm Michael Schwartz. I'm the Executive Director for San Diego County Gun Owners. I'm also the host of Gun Owners Radio. Check out Gun Owners Radio at gunownersradio.com. We have a weekly show, and it's all Second Amendment related. A little bit of politics, a little bit of gear review, a lot of interviews, and hopefully a whole lot of fun. And I think today is going to be really, really fun. I'm joined by Johnny B. Welcome,
Man,
Johnny
thank
B.
you so much for having me on. I am pumped. Man, look at you. You look so good. You're like clean shaven. Your hair's all neat and tidy. Your shirt's pressed. And here I sit in Appalachia in a dirty sweatshirt just wondering what's going on here. Thanks for having me.
Well, my wife dressed me this morning, in all honesty, so that's, New Year. It's coming up. New Year, new guy, right?
New you.
This is Gun Owners Radio MAGNUM, where we host long-form interviews. Our weekly show is 2 hours. We have it's segmented where this is long-form interviews. The idea is that we're going to have a little bit more of a conversation. We're going to get a little bit more in-depth on you, Johnny, and talk a little bit more about subjects in depth, that sort of thing. So a little bit more conversational. So it's like I'm Joe Rogan and you're.
Am I Jamie? Can you yell at me to bring that up? Just yell at me.
No, in this one you're Elon
Okay,
Musk.
good.
So
well, instead of the doobie, I've got God's chicken. So a little bit of half tea, half lemonade.
Excellent. Well, so tell everybody about your show. You have a YouTube show. It's fantastic. I like it very much. It's Second Amendment oriented, but it's not exclusively Second Amendment. Tell people what
Well,
about
I do
your
a
show.
lot of things, and primarily I am known for YouTube, and I just talk. Like, I talk about things that interest me or interest me. I don't know which one you're supposed to say for you fancy Californians, but anything that interests me, I end up talking about it. Mostly it's about the Republic and about our great country. I believe that this country is worth saving. I believe that we have good days ahead. I think this place is awesome. And I'm also, a loosely kind of a gun channel. I do a little bit of gun reviews and talk guns a lot. So most of what I do flows through the Second Amendment. I believe the Second Amendment and the First Amendment are together. And I also believe that they're together for a reason, but they are the foundation of everything. And so I do talk about that. I'm a one-issue voter, and I believe the Second Amendment is the key to saving this republic. So I talk about current events and all sorts of things that are fun. And it's a little bit, people say, what's your channel about? I don't know. I just end up rattling in front of a camera and staring at a lens, but it is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. And I think, what would you say makes your channel different from maybe other guys that are a little bit more exclusively gun?
I think I am different where the successful channels, they do things called like preparation, and they try, and they're organized. And that sets me apart because I press the camera record and I just let her rip, boys.
Well, I think that's true. Honestly, I think one of the things that really sets you aside is there is a very sincere comedy element.
What does that even mean, Mike?
Is
what is
not,
sincere comedy? Tell me, what does that mean? Explain this to me. Explain the sincere comedy.
Okay. Sincere comedy means that you're not trying to be funny. You're just an entertaining guy, and it just comes naturally. You're not sitting there writing bits. You're just an entertaining, funny guy. I think there's a sincerity behind it.
I love you. I'm getting that's it. I'm getting a blue shirt. I'm going to be you. Speaking of how awesome I am, look at there. I've got my name on my sweatshirt here. Is that not hilarious? Anybody that's listening on audio instead of, because it's called listening, I've got my name on my sweatshirt, and it was an accident when they printed this, and it is so dorky, but I've been wearing it. I can't get enough of it. My name is literally on the sleeve of my sweatshirt. So there's some sincere comedy
accident.
for you. It was an accident.
How do you accident?
Can I get my name a little bigger, please? Yeah, I don't know. I think to your point, like, people are entertained by the channel a lot, which I find entertaining in itself, that people think it's entertaining. I'm funny. Like, I know I'm funny. Like, give me a microphone and an audience, I can do live stuff right now. I did live stuff for years. I used to speak. I told somebody this morning, I used to speak 5 to 7 times in public full time, like every single week, 5 to 7 times a week. But in video, it's really weird because you don't have an audience and you just press record on your camera. And what's funny is people end up emailing to say, dude, I lost it when you said such and such. I'm like, that wasn't even funny. That's me just being dumb in my garage. So it's funny how the humor translates in this new medium. of YouTube and podcasts and all this stuff is that it's different. It's not what you think is going to be funny. One time, here's a little story. One time when Glock came out with the Glock Generation 5, remember that? And it was what? Perfection. This time we got it right. And they released the exact same gun with rounded edges. And so I learned how to play the ukulele. And I wrote a song about Glock and perfection, and the whole song was about this time it's perfect, which is funny, like to really write a song called This Time It's Going to Be Perfect and about perfection. I lost subscribers. Like, I thought it was the funniest thing. I had to learn. I spent a month learning to play the ukulele just to sing this song. I lost subscriber. Nobody liked it. And then I end up fumbling with something in front of a camera, and people are like, my wife and I laughed until we cried. My response is they need to watch better channels.
You know what, my friend? That is exactly what I mean by the sincere comedy. It was a sincere, when the prepared thing didn't go over as well as you just being you, and I think that's entertaining.
Well, I'll take it. Thank you. From me and my sweatshirt. Thanks.
I grew up. I think it's a cultural thing though too. I grew up in Panama City, Florida. You ever been to Panama
I've been
City?
to Panama City, Florida.
On spring break, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we went to high school. We went to Panama City a couple times in high school. Nothing crazy. I went with the band.
One time in band
camp. Yep.
So I grew up in Panama City, which is the South. It's lower Alabama, the redneck Riviera. And I think it's a cultural thing. I think that Southern culture, promotes and rewards, comedy. I think you guys are hilarious down there.
I think Southern comedy is amazing. Like when the blue collar comedy guys did their thing, and Larry the Cable Guy was doing that Yeehaw and Get Her Done stuff. That's not my bag. I know people really enjoyed it. I don't do I do some physical comedy, but I think for me, it's just, I do a lot of storytelling. And so for me, it's just stories and people just being themselves. And I love it. Like I crave comedy. I went to the range the other night with a professional comic, and it was one of the first times I've ever hung out socially with a full-time stand-up comedian. And we had the best time, Mike. And we got to go back and forth. Now, a lot of folks don't know this. Of course, the Hickok 45 gun channel, John Hickok's son, he's a stand-up comedian and has been for years now, and like a working comedian, and he does like full tours and everything. And he a few times has allowed me to help him with some of his jokes. Like he's texted me and said, "Hey, I've got this punchline, help me get there." And he's let me help craft some of his jokes. So that's been a lot of fun. And I think a lot of it just comes down to entertaining people. People tune into YouTube because they want to get away from their boss and their life and their kids and their yapping dog for 15 minutes. And I think life is too short not to be lighthearted, even in serious subjects like politics and the Second Amendment. And these are very serious subjects. But I mean, how serious can we take ourselves? Like we're a bunch of dudes that worship inanimate objects like 9mm.
Well, I think you're right. So, who do you? Was there a YouTube channel that inspired you to? I mean, when the first time you sat down and said, "All right, I'm going to try this," was there somebody or a couple of people that got you going, and you thought, "Well, heck, if he can do it, I can do it."
This is going to sound like a canned answer. It was Hickok 45. I watched the month before I started and turned on my camera. I watched 45 hours of Hickok 45, and I thought, boys, if he can do it, I can do it. And he really was the one. He does long form stuff, and I can't sit. I don't have time these days to sit through an hour video any day. But it was him, and it's going to be the OGs. I mean, I loved FPS Russia. Who didn't love FPS Russia in the day? I loved and still love Hickok, and I loved and still love IV8888. And what's fantastic for me is the doors were flung open in the industry pretty quickly for me, and I'm humbled by that. But they're my friends now. Like I went from watching Iraq veteran 88 Eric to standing in their kitchen eating dinner and hanging out with their dogs on the couch, and I've spent the night in their house. So they're actually friends now, and it's been really, really cool. So a lot of the ones that I watched, I'm now friends with. So those are kind of the big ones, but it's the same ones that everybody watched back in the day.
Yeah, I think we're kind of going through a little golden era or a little renaissance of gun related YouTube guys, and I'm enjoying it. I think I just think that a lot of people are popping up with better than average content. There were a lot of people at the beginning that were just kind of, trying to throw it out there. But I think that there's some really good YouTube guys in the Second Amendment world, some really good YouTube guys that I go to for real news, and this is something I do 24/7. This is something I do for a career is Second Amendment advocacy. And I'm going to, some of these YouTube guys and going, all right, help me understand this. And they're doing a really good job.
I would say that the quality has certainly leveled up in the last 5 years, like significantly. 5 years ago, you could have a channel and your camera would just be pointed straight down at your hands and you would do benchtop reviews and fumble with your giant sausage fingers on a fumbling and putting fingerprints all over a brand new CZ, and that was called content. And now guys are out with like moving cameras and drones and high-end production, and it's really, really cool. And it's been, I like what you said there, that it's been a little bit of a renaissance that we're in right now. Things are certainly better. There's more guys doing it. A lot of guys have quit. Like a lot of guys quit. I was talking to, TGC's John Patton, and we were talking one day. We reviewed a lot of channels in the last couple of years over the phone. Like, hey, check this guy out. Check this guy out. What do you think? And he has this uncanny ability. I'll show him a new channel. I'm like, hey, this guy's got potential. And he'll go, he has done it so many times. And I'm telling you, it is law when he says this. He goes, that guy will be gone in a year. And he's done that so many times. And he'll see a guy's channel. He's like, that guy can't sustain that. He'll be gone. And it's always, and they're all gone in a year. So my point is this, a lot of guys have disappeared, but there's been a lot of new channels that are not just good, but they're great, like honest to goodness, solid content. Okay, Mike, educate me. What have you been watching? Who for you is turning the dial on YouTube, or who do you just enjoy?
So I'm obviously oriented on California. By the way, you're one. I watch you all the time now.
You need better taste.
But Reno May out here in California, Reno May is doing a really good job. He does a great balance of laws and gear review and information, and the research is done really, really well. And then there's the guy, I'm now blanking, the lawyer, Patriot Lawyer, or something like that. He does a really good job of breaking things down. But I think both those guys are really good. But again, they're very California-oriented, which we probably need more of. Everything that's being done and proposed out in California is coming your way. So it's probably good for the other 49 states to hear, hey, you know what? This is what you're going to need to fight in about, after January 21st, frankly.
Yeah, it's bad. And, the way that Europe goes is the way that California goes. And the way California goes is the way that the rest of us go. That is really true. That has been that way for decades. Shout out to my boy Reno. Reno are our friends, and he has done a really, really good job. He has gotten a lot of attention, and deservedly so. His goal for 2020 was to hit 10,000 subscribers, and he hit 100,000 just the other night. So that was really cool. And, on the back end as a YouTuber, it's really exciting to see his business taken off. But I think it's a testament to what you're saying, Mike, is that people are watching and he is delivering a quality product. So Reno May is killing it. He's doing a great job.
Yeah, I really like him. So your view, so you're not just a gun guy. Let's talk about your political views. How would you describe your politics?
I think anybody that goes to D.C. is, if they're not a criminal when they get there, they're a criminal within a matter of months, if not years, or years if not months. I think they are a career politician. I think needs to meet the guillotine, and I'm sorry, fancy California, the guillotine. And I think, you say, what's my political views on, especially on politicians? I mean, they're a bunch of criminals. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that flippantly. Look at what we are in. Look at these people that start a career. And I'm talking a short career like Ilion. She goes in and had a net value of $65,000, and she is multimillionaire in 1 year as a public servant. And you say, oh, Johnny, you're just saying, it's just a redneck thing to say that they're a bunch of criminals. Well, yeah, it is a redneck thing to say, and it happens to be the truth. So how do I align? Well, I align myself as a constitutionalist, and I love me some Constitution. I'm a conservative. I'm not big on boxes, but it's hard to talk politics and not talk boxes. But if you're going to shove me in one, call me a conservative. Call me somebody that loves the republic, loves freedom. I absolutely love this place. If I bleed red, white, and blue, mostly red, and I love this place. So what am I? I'm an American, and I love this place.
I love this place too. Truly, I really truly love our form of government, and I think we have so much potential, and we've gotten so far away from the original intent of being a self-governed country. I had a kind of an eye-opening experience a couple weeks ago. You're talking about people not necessarily being in boxes. I really relearned that lesson. I was a part of a recount. A local city council member won by 5 votes, and his opponent decided to do a recount. So I was part of that recount. I got to sit there and look at the ballots, because what they do during a recount is they hold the ballot up and say, this person or that person, but you get to see the entire ballot. You don't get to see who cast the ballot. You don't get to see names or anything like that, but you get to see the whole ballot. So I got to see thousands, or at least hundreds. I think it was a couple thousand, though, ballots from my neighbors, basically, people that live in the same town as me. You would be shocked at the array of vote. They'd vote for a president, and then they'd vote for a congressman who had nothing in common with the president they voted for. And then they voted for a city council member and a judge who had nothing in common with the other. It was pretty amazing. It was very eye-opening.
I have dealt with that a little bit, and I don't like boxes either. I commend you on being active locally. I think that's amazing. Hey, did the original guy win? The guy that won by 5 votes? What was the final outcome?
Yeah, my guy won. Yes, he did. He won.
Was it still by 5?
In fact, it was still. It was still by 5. They didn't actually finish the whole recount because it was so obvious that there was nothing wrong that they just called it after one day. But he won. Absolutely.
I have a lot of viewers that love talking politics with me. And I came out and made a pretty hard stance, and I'm going to stand by what I said, that you can't call yourself pro-Second Amendment and vote for Biden. And I'm drawing that line in the sand. You can't. You can say the words. You can call yourself a dinosaur. Go out in the yard and hop around and pull your arms inside your shirt and hop around and call yourself a dinosaur. It doesn't make you a dinosaur. You can say you're pro-Second Amendment, but if you vote for Biden, you're not. And because you have the guy that is that egregiously against what we're doing, that doesn't mean I think Trump hung the moon. I don't. But I do have a lot of folks, when I came out that hard, they talked to me. I had a lot of people talk really open with me, and I love my viewers. I really do. I get 500 to 1,000 comments or emails, or 500 to 1,000 people contact me a day. I read almost every one of them every single day. And a lot of them I don't respond. Most of them I don't respond to, but I'll click heart on YouTube. I'll click double like on Instagram. But it is mind-numbing how many people are proud of the fact that they voted for one in the primary or in the major election, the presidential, and they voted the other party locally. And they're really proud of that, and they think that's just amazing. And that's not to say one side is ever. I mean, obviously, I voted Republican, but that doesn't mean the Republicans are all awesome. And if you vote anybody Democrat, you're the devil. Not at all. There's been one good Democrat out there. There's been one good Republican. There's a couple out there right now that are actually pretty good. However, to your point, I do think it's interesting how many people vote one way nationally and another way locally. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating, and I think in my humble opinion, I think that people get a little starstruck sometimes by politicians, which is so damaging. It's the exact opposite. I tell people, I run an organization of activists, and I tell them that if they're treating an elected official or a candidate better or worse than they would treat an underperforming employee, they're probably making a mistake. If you're talking to an elected official, if you're talking to a candidate, you need to treat them like an underperforming employee. Cordial, but they need to know, hey man, I don't need you. I don't need you, and you either do the work that I hired you to do, or I'll get somebody that will. And too many activists, too many of us, that we treat these politicians like superstars, and I think it's a mistake.
I've been stewing on this, and I've not put it into words, and I've not said this publicly, and I haven't even figured out what my video is about today. It could be this, is that I think we aired. Well, here's the deal. In America, let me tell you what the deal is within America, here in America, Mike, is that you can look at any society and figure out what they worship. Like the Greeks worship, they moved to worshiping youth. They went from worshiping strength to worshiping youth. The Romans worshiped youth. We've moved to worshiping youth in the last 50 years. It used to be you were a moron until you were 40. Even in old movies, you watch old movies and they're like, he's just a kid, he's 28. And now we look at some old geezer on the news and like, what does that old dude know? He's 47. And we are starting, and it is epidemic that we are starting to worship youth and devaluing knowledge. We're valuing sex appeal over everything else. And as long as you look the part, and that's, who gets the clicks, who gets the views, are people that are in the high sexual active age. And so we worship celebrities. That's not something I came up with. That's inarguable. We worship celebrities. Oh my gosh, Taylor Swift said this. Oh, holy smokes. Oh my God. Well, what about somebody that, is wise and has done something pretty cool? Let's listen to what they have to say. And it has bled into politics. It's bled into every world, including the two-way world. But we, on one hand, I got this duality. I think it's been pretty cool watching. I've never been to one, watching those Trump rallies and watching people line up for hours and watching 80,000 cars or 8,000 cars in a line doing a Trump train saying, yeah, F the left. And that's been kind of fun to watch. But the idea of Trump worship it's been a challenge for me, because when I talk about the bump stock ban, when I talk about due process second, when I talk about some of the garbage that man has said after saying the 8-year assault on your Second Amendment rights has come to a crashing end, and then he goes and says due process second, I've got a problem with that. And I've got Trump worshipers that just wail on me. They're like, bam, unsubscribe, and Johnny, you're dead to me. I'm like, I voted for the dude. I don't have a single person. Wrap your brain around this, Michael. I don't have a single person in my local social group that voted in the primaries this year, because we all knew that T-Man was going to win the Tennessee. We knew he'd get the Tennessee nod. They voted in the major election, but not in the primaries. I went and stood in line to vote for the man this year in the primaries. I'm the only one that I know here that voted in the primaries. There was like 7 of us. And so I think it's important to vote for the guy, because I'm not voting for the child sniffer. However, that doesn't mean I worship him. I love what you said. They're an underperforming employee, and they better get they're on thin ice at all times. Term limits would solve all of this. Go.
Yeah, so what I love what you said about worshiping youth and sex appeal. I hadn't really thought about it in that way before, and I think you're right. What do we do? Like, what do we do about that? Is there a way to get away from it, or how do we change that?
I don't think we do. Like, we're always saying we need to get back. We need to go back. Everybody our age is always saying we need to go back. Andy Griffith is done. They canceled it. It was done in 1969. Those days, Mayberry is gone. I believe the balkanization of this country is coming. I was laying in bed early this morning in the dark thinking about this, and this is wild times in Tennessee, but this is what I was thinking. I'm somewhere, my prediction is somewhere 20 to 50 years is when we'll be balkanized. The folks that are going to balkanize us have not been born yet, or are really, really young. So I think it's going to be our grandkids that do it. I think we're done. I think the country's done. I think the Constitution is going to last a few more decades. And that doesn't mean that I don't love it and it's not worth fighting for. I'm going to keep fighting. And I'm not done even today. When this podcast is done, I'm moving right to the next fight. I'm going to keep fighting. I don't think, to your question of how do we steer culture, we ain't. Like, it is massive. The current religion in America is sports. And by every qualification of what a religion is we currently do sports. Now, COVID has put a damper on it, especially as the major sports going woke, but also put a damper on it. But up until January, February of this year, the major religion was sports, and again, which is celebrity and hero worship. I don't think we can contain it. What do you think?
Well, what you were saying about the Constitution, I think is very accurate. But I think that people might hear that and think, oh, no, the Constitution is going to be, they're not going to repeal the Constitution. And what they don't understand is, the words are going to stay. That document's going to be there, and they're not going to literally repeal the Second Amendment or any of the amendments. What they're going to do is they're going to act completely different and enact laws that have nothing to do with the original intent of that document. So it'll stay there. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I think what you're saying is it's going to be there, but it's only going to be there in writing. It's not going to be there in spirit. It's not going to be there in in deed. We're going to have and we're already halfway there. We're already look nothing like what the Constitution was meant to be. I think is that accurate?
And I think people are already banging away at the keyboard saying, yeah, we're already there. To your point, yeah, we're already halfway there. And I think, yeah, maybe for the next 20 years, we're going to be at that point. No, when I'm saying balkanization, I'm talking about new countries, completely 3, 4, 5 new countries coming out of North America. I think the Constitution will be done in the next 5 decades. We're talking the Third Reich thought they would reign for 1,000 years. The Roman Empire fell. The Greek Empire fell. It's not that they just fall. Like there's this one like major thing and they fall. They evolve and devolve over time and they get top heavy. De Tocqueville said speaking of democracy, the French philosopher said, as soon as the populace learns that they can vote for themselves, generosity from the public largesse, democracy has ceased to exist. Yeah. And we're way past that. When they're screaming into the cameras, get me my Obama phone, they have figured out if I vote blue, I get more free crap. If I vote blue, I get my student debt removed. We have already lollipopped. We are so top heavy that I don't think we make it out of this. It doesn't mean I hate America. I love America. It doesn't mean I'm Antifa out throwing rocks. I believe in this country, and I want a good country to pass on to my children. Literally, I want to pass the great country on to my children. 3, 4, 5 decades, I do think the Constitution will come to a conclusion. It'll be moved to a museum, and there will be 3, 4, 5 countries split up in North America. I really do believe in the coming balkanization.
Wow. Okay, so that's a much bolder statement than I anticipated. Wow. I hope not. I hope enough people stand up and say no way. I'll tell you this: there's been a lot of talk in California about splitting up California into 2 or 3 or I think as many as 6 states, and I'm on board with that.
I'm telling you, and
I think a lot of people don't.
Go ahead.
A lot of people don't understand one thing about California. I live in San Diego County. The city of San Diego is maybe about half of San Diego County. We have about 3.5 million people, or about a third actually. So we have 3.5 million people in the county. We have about 1.5 million or so in the actual city of San Diego. If you get out into East County or parts of North County, we're Nashville. We're Tennessee. We're Mississippi. And I think that, but we get buried by the huge population centers, San Diego and LA and San Francisco. And I'll tell you, there's a whole lot of really good gun-loving, Second Amendment-loving, Constitution-loving people in California, but we get buried by these huge cities. And if you could split us up a little bit, I think that these folks that live in my neighborhood would have a little bit more of a voice. It's fun to make fun of Californians. I make fun of them too, but there's a lot of really, really hardworking, good people out here that we're on the front lines and we're pushing hard. I would love to see some kind of political structural change to California that would return their voice, because right now we have none.
I don't know if it was on your show. I think it was when we met about a month ago. I think it was on your show. I mentioned that I always do shout outs to my California viewers, anybody that's behind the walls that are Massachusetts and Jersey and New York. And I've had so many viewers go, thank you for not forgetting us. I even did a video one time called Just Stop Saying the Words, well, if you're in California, just move. Because that's the worst. How do you tell somebody that they have a job and a career and their abuela or abuelita lives right next door and they can't just move everybody? It's not that easy to bang onto a keyboard. Just move. You forget people have lives in there and their kids are in school and they have careers. And so I never forget Californians. It's funny you mentioned Nashville. Like you get outside of San Diego and you get in the county, it's Nashville. Oh no, you get into San Diego, that's Nashville. Nashville's now blue, and it.
As soon as I said Nashville, I regretted it because I know exactly what you're talking
Nashville's
about.
blue?
I should have just said. Yes, I do. As soon as I said that, I thought, darn, I should have said that. A lot of Californians moving to Tennessee.
I'm telling you, it is crazy what's going on right now. A friend of mine moved last week, and he's in L.A. He has a large company in L.A., a Second Amendment company, and he moved where? Austin, Texas. You cannot get a moving truck in LA right now because all the moving trucks have moved to Texas or to Arizona, and we'll see what happens. Historically, and I love talking generalities, Mike. I love talking tendencies and generalities. I
Yep.
like looking at the big picture. My passion is big picture. And is every Japanese kid better at math than American kids? No, but about 3, 4, 5% as a whole, a little bit better. Why? Is it cultural or is it DNA? And it's I'm an educator, and it's a fascinating conversation to talk about that. So I like looking at generalities, big picture, big stuff. So you might find somebody that moves from California and they moved into Nashville and they change. They're like, hey, I was in a crappy city that was run by Democrats for 60 years. I need to change. I'm going to move and change. But the tendency is, what I'm about to say, the tendency is quite the opposite. They've done it in the Delta in North Carolina. The Delta's done. And I'm telling you, they've done it in Nashville, and they flee all that nonsense, get to their new place, and keep voting, because this time things will be different if we just vote these same policies in and blow the government up as big as possible. Bloated government ends up with people in the streets. It is nasty, and we'll see. We'll see what they're going to do to Austin, Texas. But to your point of California maybe splitting into multiple states, don't forget there's already paperwork on a new state called Greater Idaho that is already in the process. There are people that are trying and fighting for Greater Idaho. I predict that Texas will balkanize maybe before the whole country does.
That would be amazing. I have this. I was probably delusional. You tell me if I was. I think that history. I've been proven this was a delusional idea. But for a while, I thought, man, I wonder if we could convince enough gun-loving people in other states to move to California and help us fight. Just put in 5 years. Move out here, put in your 5 years, help us vote the right way, and then go back home, and see if we can get an influx of people. And I think I was delusional. I think people, I think there are two parts to that. One is I don't think people are willing to sacrifice that much for the cause, number one. But number two, the other thing happened. The other way happened. You're right, a lot of horrible voting people in California moved to other places, but a lot of Second Amendment, pro-constitutional people said, that's it, I'm out of here. I'm going someplace where people agree with me. And we've been hemorrhaging, Second Amendment voters for years.
It's unfortunate, and I think, to your point, are you delusional? I don't think in theory you are. The idea that you can put a mass population in and influence the vote happened back to Ilyar. It happened in Ilyar. It happened in Her. They brought in those Somalis under Obama, and I'm telling you, they have skewed the vote. I went and hung out with an economist about a week ago. He's a professor of economics, and he was talking about the same thing, and because you can absolutely do this. He's got the numbers. You could import a small number of people into Wyoming, and you would own within 5 or 8 years, you would own 2 seats in Congress and 2 seats in the Senate, and you would absolutely have a vote on the floor in D.C. The importing of votes is not just doable, it's doable in practice. Now, it usually is the other side doing that. I don't think gun owners are organized enough. The thing about the left is they're in lockstep with each other. They don't need anyone to say, hey, bigger government. They don't need anyone to say, hey, open borders. They don't need anyone to say, hey, down with America and down with everything this country was founded on. They're in lockstep with each other. We, on the other hand, are a bunch of disorganized people because we have other views and other beliefs, and we're not militant about it.
Well, and you're talking about generalities. Pro-gun folks tend to be very individualistic, whereas the anti-gun folks tend to make the argument that, hey, this is the better, for the betterment of society. We need to get rid of all guns. Where gun owners are saying, hey, I need, for the betterment of me, for my self-protection, we need to have gun ownership. And I think that trying to get a group whose political philosophy is based on individualism, to do what everyone else is doing, it's probably as close to herding cats as I've ever seen. I mean, they're really just a bunch of people that say, hey, I'm going to leave them alone and I'm going to live my life, and then they're going to see that and they're going to leave me alone. Well, they're not going to leave you alone, but organizing individuals is extremely difficult. It's probably the toughest thing in the world.
Well, talking generalities, I mean, you're going to find different examples in each category, but in general, if you see a prepper, somebody that has built a compound, that has stored up food, that has made a way for their family to live for the next decade or so, they're going to be right wing. And the other version, the other side of that on the left, and again, we're dividing the whole country into left and right. It's so much more nuanced in gray areas than that. However, for the sake of conversation, it's kind of fun. But if you're going to find a prepper, and I'm using air quotes for the audio viewers, but air quote prepper on the left, they are not storing up food. What they are doing is they are propping up the government to make sure there are more government programs so you can eat and so you can live and you can have your housing paid for. And oh my gosh, there's COVID right now. We need more programs to pay our mortgage. We need more programs to pay off our loans. That is their version of prepping. And that is in itself societal, and they're looking at themselves as a group. Whereas to your point, yeah, some cowboy in Montana that's prepping, he is on his own and he don't need you or me. He's got it handled. And I think the divide between people that see themselves individualistic versus societal absolutely does divide left and right, blue and red.
So are you you know, if I don't ask something too personal and tell me I don't want to go into that, but are you married and have kids?
I'm married. I have 2 kids in high school.
Excellent. Okay. So what about being a married guy with 2 kids? Why are you a gun owner? What about being a gun owner or being married and having 2 kids? Why is it important for you to be a gun owner?
I think as a question, I think that's an interesting question. Here's why. One of the lamest things you can ever say in an interview is, that's an interesting question. But I think just the idea of you asking that question fascinates me. And because you say, hey, why are you a gun owner? And I don't know if that is distinctly Californian, because I don't know, Mike, if your day-to-day life is like you walk into Starbucks, is it you versus a whole bunch of anti-gunners? And like that you are living a little bit separate life. You are the cowboy, maybe the ideological cowboy in your area. I don't know, but I suspect if there's one of the 2 of us that is an ideological cowboy in our own area, living the rebel life as an outlaw, a political outlaw, it's you and not me. Like, I didn't decide to become a gun owner. I owned guns before I was born. And so, why do you own guns? Because Dad owns, like my mom owns guns. Mom's got a gun in her purse right now. There's no delineation. I may have told y'all this before. In Southern culture, not all, but in general, in Southern culture, there's no delineation between who's a gun owner and who's not. I have 2 friends that I know that don't own guns. And that's it. Like, that is it of every single person that I know in the area. And I've thought about this a lot over the years. Who do I know that doesn't, that my grandmother died the other month at 96, and they found guns under this couch and under that couch and in this drawer. Why do I own guns? Because I'm an American, and because like Dad handed them to me when I was 8. I mean, there's pictures of me shooting before I could hold up. They're having to hold up the shotgun to let me shoot, which sounds redneck. No, that's freedom. Now, I will say this a little bit to your point. Now I see the value of not calling 911 when there's a bump in the night. In my area, the average call time out in the county is between 20 and 24 minutes. Whatever's happening is over in 24 minutes. Like we're talking, we're mopping up the blood, or we're kidnapped, or we scared off the dog that was scratching at the door. It was nothing, but it's over. And so now the older I get, the more I see the value in self-protection. And for me, to answer your question, I think it's self-protection. But for me, it's an interesting question. What did you think about my point about the ideological cowboyness?
Well, it's definitely different, out here in California. We didn't grow up, I've lived in California my entire adult life. I was a military brat, moved around a little bit. But in California, most people didn't grow up hunting, didn't grow up with guns. That's at least my experience. So it is different. The other thing is that the gun laws have created a generation of people that, guns are weird, guns are exotic. And the difficulty in getting a concealed carry permit out here has created probably 2 generations of people who think that carrying a gun is weird and exotic. Whereas the rest of the nation, pretty much most of the rest of the nation, it's normal. It was that last part of your answer that I really wanted to get to. You grew up with guns and they were introduced to you, and it was just a way of life. But at some point as an adult, I think you kind of make the decision to be a gun owner every day. Well, I'm not going to go sell them today. I'm not going to get rid of them today. I'm going to continue to be a gun owner. I'm probably going to buy another gun next week. So at some point you kind of continue to make that decision to be a gun owner, and I think that it's changed not just in California but across the country. It's not as much of a, well, I grew up hunting. Now it's hey, I got to defend myself. I got to protect myself. And I think that's changed across the entire world. If you look at even some of the obviously the biggest Second Amendment organization is NRA. If you look at their messaging has changed tremendously just in the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, if you look at old commercials, they were all about tradition and hunting and
not anymore.
And now it's all about not anymore. Now it's all about, hey, we got an even smaller carry gun to review, and I think that's changing. And I think that we're doing a fairly good job. We were talking about the YouTube folks that we like and the people that are really getting the message out there, and some of the organizations that are really fighting hard, like Firearms Policy Coalition and some of the other folks. I think they've done a really good job of embracing that and going, hey, wait a minute. The Second Amendment was never about hunting. The culture is changing across the country, and we need to fight for the real reason. It used to be a little taboo to talk about, like, well, I carry a gun for protection, and people would kind of shy away from that. Well, I'm just for sport and hunting, that's all. But now it's the most important thing, especially when I know a lot of folks who are women. I know a lot of folks who are minority. I know a lot of folks that are part of the LGBT community, and they tell me that, hey, Mike, you're a white guy. You don't understand the difficulties in my life, and the dangers I'm in. And I believe them. I absolutely believe that they're probably in much more danger than I am when they leave the house. Therefore, I'm going to teach them how to defend themselves by buying a gun and getting the training and getting a CCW and carrying every day.
We'll never know the numbers, but you know this probably better than I do, is that in the last year, I mean, we're talking don't hold me to these numbers because I'm literally pulling them out of my ear, but 80% of all new gun owners are minorities this year, and it is astronomical what we've seen. And if you get on the news, you'll think that the country is being burned down by a bunch of morons, which it kind of is on some small level, microcosm level. But the overall reality is the gun sales, and I don't know if you saw what happened in November. We're talking even more than ever. It just ramps up, and they are almost, to your point, almost exclusively people that have made a decision that I don't have to rely on another person to protect myself and my family. For me, I did make a switch. Why do I own guns? Because I've always owned guns. But in your 20s and maybe in my 30s, you realize the world's not perfect, and the world is not going to be, I'm not always going to have my dad to take care of everything, and I am on my own. And that is a major step to go through. It took me years to get through that. If there's a bump in the night, it is on me. And it is a big deal. And I think, to your point also, that people are moving towards self-protection more than ever. And I think that's important. I think it's critical. I think it is empowering to women, it is empowering to the LGBTQ folks. After the Pulse nightclub shooting, the spike in LGBTQ sales went through the roof. I hope that the training also goes through the roof. I hope also that amongst the minorities that are getting trained, there are guys and gals out there working very hard right now to equip and educate minority shooters, and they can do things that you and I, and get into neighborhoods that you and I cannot get into, Mike. And it's really good. There's some YouTube guys, some social media guys that is all they do full time is educate, equip, and help minorities protect themselves. Here's the question. Big picture, why did the minorities spike this year? Why did it spike so heavy? Now, it was big. We'll never know how the numbers really are, but it's incredible. 13% of the population, somewhere in there, 13% of the population in America is African American, but they accounted for 80% of new gun owners. Well, there's a bunch of different reasons, and we'll never really know. Partially is that all gun laws are racist. That's inarguable. They are, and so you have an entire population that is essentially disarmed because of the laws in America for the last 100 years, and so you have a vacuum of folks that are not armed. So there was automatically a reason that should have spiked up, because we're trying to get those folks armed for the first time in their culture's existence or subculture's existence. But the other reason is, my question is why? Why did so many, and you and I we are not positioned to even answer that question. We're not the right guys to ask. Pasty 1 and Pasty 2 here don't ask us anything except for where the best hot dog in the area is. However, I still have that question. I'm friends with a YouTuber named Liv, and she runs a great YouTube channel. It's blowing up, called 32 Icon. And she doesn't exclusively do minority stuff. I hate that whole idea. Like, one of the worst things in our industry is when you have a woman on a show and they're like, well, tell us the woman's perspective. And the women are like, can I just be a gun owner and an American? Can I just be an American like you? Why can't I just own the same gun you? Why do I have to have a pink gun, Mossberg? I'm looking at you, Ruger. Why do I have to have a pink gun? So
I hate pink guns. I hate
the whole
that
thing
whole
is
trend.
dumb. And I don't want to pigeonhole Liv into this. 32 Icon, the YouTuber, that, oh, she's a minority gun owner and she has a different perspective. Well, she's also an American and a gun owner, and she can own anything she wants, and we can talk openly. However, she's in a different position than I am, because she lives up north in Connecticut, to be able to talk about this whole situation differently than I am. So I'm left with the question of, why did it spike so heavily? I can't answer that question, but I think it's pretty cool. And finally, last point, I'll let you talk. I hope that the education is following, and the practice, and I mean the muscle memory, not just one box of ammo and one gun inside of the box that it came in a drawer locked away from the kids, but I mean talking honest to goodness education and tourniquet education, and plan, and like all sorts of having a game plan of what goes on in your house or in your car or in your office if something goes down. So it is spiked, but I also hope and I pray that the education is spiked as well.
Yeah, the reason for the spike is definitely above my pay grade. But I've absolutely seen it too. Our organization offers, we call them shooting socials. And we pair people up with experienced shooters, people who are inexperienced, or most of them have really never even touched a gun before, which is crazy, Johnny. I run into 40, 50-year-old men and women who have never touched a gun before, which that probably sounds crazy to you and your neighbors, but it's kind of the norm here in San Diego. Anyway, so we do these shooting socials. We pair people up with experienced shooters, and we were getting so many requests that we just said, okay, we're just going to open this up to whoever wants to sign up. Come on down. Sign up in advance. Come on down. And for the first time in our 5-year history, we had an entire class. Typically, classes are between 10 and 20 people. We had an entire class of women. The entire class. And I talked to the organizer, Wendy, who's also a woman. I said, did you target women, or is this just one group? No, there were all individual women who found us on the same day, just having, we do this at least once, sometimes we do it twice a month, and the entire class were women. And they're all new gun owners. They're all just bought in the last, 6-8 months, and it's been amazing. But I think you're absolutely right. The education portion is extremely, extremely important. Have you ever been in a defensive gun use situation at all?
No, I've never like I had somebody one night banging on my door. We live out in the county. Like if you're banging on my door, you have come down a long driveway and you are purposefully there, banging on the door at 1:30 in the morning. And so I racked the 9mm, and yeah, I know people are already mad. Why'd you have to rack it? Was there one not in the chamber? No, I had a child in the house at the time, and I didn't carry with one in the chamber in the middle of the night in my house. I popped one in the chamber, went to the front door, and screamed, "Who is it?" And they're like, "It's the sheriff's department. Open the door, please." And it was a bunch of nothing. They had asked me a question about, I had a vehicle parked in downtown, and they're like, "Is your vehicle stolen?" I'm like, "No, I left it at the church overnight. Go away, lady." That's my big story. Like, no, I've never pulled a gun. I hope and I pray I never have to pull a gun. Statistically, the average, what's it called? The civilian, a non-military person, will statistically never be in a firefight. 0.000 and some change, you'll never be in a firefight. It's not going to happen. How about you? Have you ever pulled your pistol?
Well, no, I had a kind of a similar situation. About 3 in the morning, my wife and I are sleeping, and we hear glass break, and we both sit up in bed, and we both know exactly what's going on. There is zero question in our head. My wife was terrified. I jump out of bed, grab the nightstand Glock, and my first thought was, I'm so glad. And this sounds hokey, but this is absolutely what happened. My first thought, I can still remember sitting there in the middle of the night with my gun in my hand. I remember thinking to myself, I'm so glad I went to IDPA matches, because I had just gone through about a monthly IDPA match for about 2 years, and the gun felt comfortable in my hand, and I wasn't fumbling around and blah, blah, blah. That was the first thought in my head. My wife was so terrified that she doesn't even remember doing this. She screams at the top of her lungs, "Do you want me to call 911?" She doesn't even remember that, screaming that. She was so terrified. Long story short is, it ended up, we had it was like a lens for an overhead light. It got old and fell and hit the pergo floor and shattered. It wasn't somebody breaking in. But that was about as realistic a dry run as I ever want to go through. And it taught me the importance of training, and it taught me not to sleep naked.
Well, I think you and I both have lived very sheltered lives, and I'm thankful for that. It's a great country. It's a great country. I'm buddies with, name drop time, with Clint Smith up in Oregon at Thunder Ranch. And Clint has a phrase that he says, and Clint changed my life, and I don't say that lightly. Clint absolutely has changed my life. I went out there twice in 2020 to hang out with him and Heidi and the Thunder Ranch team. But Clint says that when you carry, that you are no longer subject to the whims of other people. And it's true. They say, get in your van. No, sorry, I'm not getting in a van with you. Not that I'm like really kidnappable, but you're no longer subject to other people's decisions in your life. Now, the scariest thing here, we've got a little bit of crime here in East Tennessee, but it's all going to be your cousins. Like, if you remove domesticity away from like who your cousins, if it's your relatives, other than that, there's no crime here, except for meth. We got a little bit of domestic problems here. Cousins fighting, boyfriends fighting, girlfriends fighting, in-laws and outlaws. We got a bit of a meth problem here. And that's a little bit scary, but I sleep just fine at night. I sleep really, really good. Here's a good one. I woke up the other morning. I was home alone the other morning. It was the day after Christmas. And I woke up, they all went over to the in-laws' house, and I stayed in my own house because I had to feed the cat. I need to stay home with the cat. And so I didn't go overnight trip to Nashville. And I woke up the next morning, and Mike, somebody was in the house. Thump, 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 like footsteps inside the house early. And I'm like, my family's 300 miles away, and my dad has a key to the house. He wouldn't come in the house because he's afraid to get shot. I don't have anybody. I checked my phone. Nobody had called me. Nobody had knocked on the door. Was I scared? Nope. Just reach over, 43 next to the bed. I laid there and thought about it, looked out the window, and there wasn't nobody in the house. There were 3 men up on the roof cleaning out the gutters, and they had just gotten there at the crack of dawn to get started. So my point is this. I wasn't at the whims. I'm not subject to the whims of window cleaners or meth heads. That makes me sound like a tough guy. I would probably wet my pants. I've had one good adrenaline dump, and I stood a black bear down face to face, and I stood my ground against a black bear once. I've had another adrenaline dump. I almost died. I had fishing waders fill up with water, and you know that's bad, in a roaring river in East Tennessee. And I had an adrenaline dump there. I've never had and both of those were life or death, literal life or death. More people die from black bears here than they do from grizzly bears. Grizzlies aren't even that scary. Don't tell Leonardo DiCaprio that. But black bears are dangerous. A 70-pound black bear will eat you alive. I stood him down. Adrenaline dump. But the adrenaline dump from an actual firefight, we practice that stuff at Thunder Ranch. I don't practice it enough here, but heaven forbid, to your point, does it feel good in your hand? Can you pop that safety off and on without even thinking about it? Are you reloading? Can you do everything with one hand if you lose the other hand in a fight? And what are you going to do with light? What are you going to do without light? What are you going to do when your hearing's gone? Because you light off that AR in the house, you're now hearing for the next hour. So it's a scary thing. Again, it comes back to education. It's not enough, and I want everybody listening to know this. Beyond redneck jokes, beyond Second Amendment, beyond politicians, beyond this country, beyond all of this stuff, we need to train, and we need to be very comfortable with these tools that we have in our arsenal, and we need to train all the time and shoot. None of us shoot enough. Nobody does. How much are you training these days, Mike?
Not as much as I should. I go to, we have an event once a year where we go to Front Sight. We get about 250 people to go to Front Sight for 4 days, and I always take the pistol class, and my wife now comes with me, and I take the basic pistol class because it's 4 days of concentrated, back to basics, this is a gun kind of training. It's not just putting holes in paper. So it's kind of a forced 4-day concentrated, refresher course. But you were talking about Clint Smith. He has really turned into one of my favorite gun guys. We interviewed him on Gun Owners Radio a few months ago, or we've interviewed him a couple times. And to prepare for the interview, I watched a few of his videos. And to be honest with you, the first couple videos I watched, I thought, this guy's a jerk. I don't like him. And then the more I got into him, the more I realized this guy's, he's a genius. He's a genius. He's a focused, generous with his time, genius. And I really, really enjoyed him. But my first take was, this guy, I was all grumbly, but man, what a great guy.
He is, I believe, and I mean this honestly, but he's also a personal friend now. But I thought this before I ever even met him. I think he's the best among us. I think they have documented, Clint's 72, 73 now. He's got decades more in him to serve and to help educate people. But I believe they are doing a really good job documenting what's in his noggin, because he knows his stuff, and his instructors are incredible as well. Jack, their lead instructor, is as good as Clint. Clint comes across as a little bit of a bad word at first, but then you actually watch 2 or 3 more videos and you realize that's just him. He is a salty, foul-mouthed, cranky old Vietnam vet. And when he says, he said one day, he's like, John, he said, if this happens, you're going to get shot right here and your arm's going to go numb for 3 days. Ask me how I know. And when he's talking about getting shot, he knows what it's like to get shot. And he has got more knowledge in him because he is not shooting holes in paper. He is not doing speed drills. He does not have a timer. There's nothing wrong with any of that. He is talking about how to survive in a fight. You shoot them in the crotch. And what he has in him, I cannot say enough. There's a lot of good trainers in our country, a lot. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands, of great men and women who are educators. I believe Clint's the best among us.
I do. I really, really respect him a lot. He is a really great guy. What frustrates you about gun owners? What one thing frustrates the heck out of you when it comes to gun owners?
It's mostly the dudes, and this is just dude culture. Is we're all Atlanta Falcons, it's the greatest team. I love Atlanta Falcons. And they go all hard, and everything else besides Atlanta Falcons are garbage. We do the same in this industry. Oh, it's got to be Glock, or it's nothing else. Or if you don't do IDPA and train with there's an Instagram the other day lit me up because I don't train with a clock and train with a timer. And he's like, if you don't do it that way, you're just fake. I'm better than you. We're just too far into one area, or too far into everything. One brand of bullets. One way of even me, Clint's the best. If you don't train with Thunder Ranch, you're an idiot. I think it's just our obsession with our little nuances. There's most guns out there fire great. There's very few of major brands that I don't trust. Most bullets work just fine, and most of the instructors can tell you how to survive in a firefight and do a pretty good job of it.
We do. We make mountains out of molehills,
which is fun.
And I wish it's fun, but I do wish that gun owners I wish they'd slice and dice anti-gun owners as good and efficiently as they do pro-gun owners. They attack guys who don't like Glocks or attack guys that do like Glocks, and I wish they'd attack guys that want to ban Glocks. But yeah, it can be really frustrating. There's an ego there. And so what do you think what's the best, this is a question I wrote down that I thought is kind of interesting. Might be kind of difficult to answer, but what do you think? What's the best thing to happen in the gun world in our lifetime? What's the absolute best thing to happen, whether it's political or whatever it is? What's the best thing to happen in our lifetime when it comes to gun ownership?
Eugene Stoner. By far, it's
Wow.
Eugene Stoner. Now, where kids today, they're like, "Who is that?" Well, he's the dude that he made a little tool that is modular and it works. Yeah, there's a little bit of problems with the AR, nothing that can't be overcome. But I think Eugene Stoner revolutionized, and he put a tool into our hands that has not been surpassed, and it is the greatest firearm that is on planet Earth. There's a lot of different models, a lot of different ways. You can have bad ones and good ones. But I think Eugene Stoner probably, the technology hasn't changed until we're firing plasma rifles. It hasn't changed. We're still doing the same thing that the cowboys shot, albeit with smokeless powder. But nothing's changed in 150 years. So I think for me, it's going to be the AR-15. I think 1B, if that's 1A, 1B to that's going to be plastic. Polymer changed a lot. It really did, and that's been a really, really big deal. Most of my handguns are hammer fired. I like steel guns. I very rarely shoot striker fired guns for fun, but it's been important. All that plastic Kydex holsters are important. Plastic's been a really, really big deal, but I think Eugene Stoner is the greatest thing in the last 50 years.
It really is amazing how successful the AR pattern rifle has become, especially in the last probably about last 20 years. It seems like once the flat tops came around, which was I think early 2000s, man, it just took off. It just took off, and it late 90s, California had yet another expansion of their assault weapons ban. And if you're listening, yes, I put air quotes around assault weapon. I know it's not a real term, but that's what they call it. So, so ARs were darn near impossible, would have been impossible in California if not for some really creative engineers who came up with like bullet buttons and stuff. Do you even know what a bullet button is outside of California?
Only because I have so many California viewers. I know about bullet buttons, and I know about like the Cali key, and I know a lot about what you guys and gals deal with. It's awful what y'all deal with.
It is. I was on I was on vacation in Alaska a few years ago, and we went into this little trinket. Well, my wife went into a little trinket shop, and I followed her. She's looking at all the little potpourri or whatever that's in the little shop. And the guy who ran the shop had an AR hanging up behind the counter. So that's what I went and talked to him about. And I was explaining to this Alaskan who had a little, tourist trinket shop with an AR hanging up in behind the counter for protection. It was his personal AR for protection. And I was explaining to him what we had to do in order to own an AR in California. This guy was looking at me like I was totally insane. It didn't even register what we had to do. Like it makes no sense at all. He couldn't even picture it in his head what I was talking about, and just finally he kind of shook his head. I mean, it really is difficult, but we can do it.
It's out of control.
Yeah.
I'm talking over top of you. My friend that just moved to Texas last week from LA, I texted him and I said, RIP your wallet for the next 5 years. Like for the first time in his life, he can buy anything he wants. Welcome to America, champ. And I think that's the way it should be. It's just a tool. It's, if you want to run somebody over with your car, go do it. Like murder's already illegal. So many people are like, that's a scary gun. You could hurt somebody. Well, you got kitchen knives, champ. There's somebody dies every day in America from an intentional hammer blow. A claw hammer, a framing hammer, or a roofing hammer kills somebody every day intentionally, not even on accident, but intentionally. It's just a tool. But boy, man, those AR-15s are cool. I'm sorry what y'all deal with, but I'll say this, my number one rifle, my number one AR, I literally trust my life to it. And I don't say that lightly. It runs so well. I trust my life to it. I would trust my kid's life to it.
Yeah, it is amazing, and it's they outlawed the bullet button a couple years ago, and I actually set up a booth at the local gun show to show people how they could still own an AR without a bullet button, because there are a couple different ways to do it here in California. I'm not going to go into the details, but what was amazing was how many younger guys maybe in their 20s and 30s who came up and said, "Oh yeah, I just own a standard bullet button AR." And I thought, what? A standard bullet? That's not standard. That's not normal. But there's a whole generation, or maybe half a generation here in California, where the only way they were able to own an AR is if it was some kind of weird, neutered, ridiculous version of it. But that's interesting you say Eugene Stoner and the AR. I think that's an excellent answer. And I really do. I think that his product absolutely, it's kind of this race between, it was like a three-way race between ARs, AKs, and everything else. And it really does seem like ARs won handily, and they're here for at least
if
for
I
a
only
while.
could give you one gun for the rest of your life and you've got to be able to protect your family, it's not about bumps in the night. Nobody breaks into houses. The average home break-in is at 2 p.m. We think bump in the night because we are, not, I don't know, diurnal animals or whatever animal sleeps at night, and non-nocturnal. So we're afraid in the night because we have our eyes closed and our senses are way down. So we're always afraid in the night. It ain't about that. It's about what happens at 2 p.m, what happens in your office, what happens in your vehicle with road rage. If I could only give you one, you'd pick, if you really sat down, you would absolutely pick the AR. It's the right answer because you can bring down anything that's in North America. You can hunt with it, like I'm telling you this. But there's a lot of pretty good uses, and they're modular, and they run really well.
I agree. I think that's an excellent answer. I would say another answer would have to be somewhere in the CCW realm. Maybe when Florida started issuing, or became shall issue when it comes to CCWs. I think CCW carrying outside of your home has changed the industry and changed politics for the positive. And, I'm glad to see that it's been successful. I mean, I know a lot of people think that, well, gee, we should just go to constitutional carry. I hear you. But to get, maybe we'll get there one day. But to get there, we had to go through, the shall issue, and changing may issue states the shall issue. And we're working on court cases to where it's actually considered a civil right again. And, but I think that both of those are real important issues. So, well, cool, man. This has been great, Johnny. I really appreciate your time. I've enjoyed talking to you. What else do you want people to know about you or gun ownership or the Second Amendment or your channel?
I think I want people to, back to the point of education, I want everybody, I don't care if ammo is expensive, find it, dig on the internet, beat the bushes, get enough ammo, get your backside and your poot tootie to the range, and don't shoot holes in paper. Shoot one shot, reload, shoot one shot, reload. Find a good trainer. Watch YouTube videos. Go to a class. Train yourself. Arm yourself. If you own an AR, get all that garbage that you've packed all onto that thing. Get that stuff off and strip that thing down to what you actually need in the middle of the night if there's a bump in the night. Get better at what you do. This republic is worth saving, and I think you and your family are worth saving. Go train. Buy ammo. You're worth it.
That's awesome. I went to a 4-day shotgun class years ago, and I show up at this class. There were 50 people in the class, and I had a Mossberg 500 with no bells, no whistles, no nothing, and everybody else had, everything, keychain holders, and I mean, their shotguns looked like the Millennium Falcon, and I was really intimidated. Well, we got maybe 100 rounds into this class, and it looked like a yard sale around everybody's, because they were taking stuff off, or stuff was falling off or failing or whatever, or it got too heavy. But yeah, I totally agree. What, when it comes to, do you like John Correa, by the way? When it comes to training, have you seen
John's
his
a friend
channel?
of mine. So John is, he's the Brazilian blood channel. So he shows a lot of Brazilian death videos. And John knows his stuff. John is passionate about training. John and I are buddies. We text like little girls and send memes to each other. And he's doing a really, really good work.
Yeah, he does an excellent job. But when it comes, I think when it comes to training, I think he's putting out some of the most useful information in the gun world. And I really appreciate what he does, and really appreciate what you do. And I look forward to watching your channel grow. And I look forward to watching it every single week and seeing what you have to say. And I really appreciate you spending time with me, Johnny. And I can't just keep doing what you're doing, man.
I appreciate all that you're doing and fighting that fight. It's huge in California. You are doing a service that matters, and it really does. So anything I can do to help you and all of you guys and gals that are out there, man, just holler at me, whatever I can do to help. Thank you for all y'all are doing. And thank you for this opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks for watching our Magnum show, where we dig into gun owners topics a little more in depth. You can watch us live every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, right here on our YouTube channel, or if you're in the San Diego area, you can listen to us on 1170 a.m. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform for free. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can help restore and protect the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.